Real quick, before getting into this video, I wanted to take a second and kind of pay my respects to one of the greatest voices in all of movie history, James Earl Jones. While editing this video a couple days ago, I seen the news and, we lost a legend. Being such a big Star Wars fan, I will always think of James Earl Jones as Darth Vader, but also as well as Mufasa, and being, even though a minimal part, a great addition to the Sandlot movie. And there's so many more roles that have touched so many other people out there. My heart goes out to his family during this devastating time, and he will most definitely be missed. So James Earl Jones, you will be missed, and rest in peace, Lord Vader. After months and months of anticipation, Beetlejuice is finally here. I went to go and see it the other day, and I do got quite a few things to say about it. First and foremost, though, if you clicked on this video, I just want to thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm glad you were able to find some time out of your day to come listen to me talk about some Beetlejuice. So let's jump right into it, because there's a lot to cover in this movie. I'm going to try and be mild on spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie, maybe you don't want to watch this video until you have seen it and then come back and check it out. But for the most part, I'm gonna try to keep it mild on the spoiler talk. So it has been 30, close to 40 years since we got the original film Beetlejuice in 1988. And I don't know about you guys, this movie was highly anticipated, at least for myself, because though I don't really have a strong connection with the Beetlejuice movie, it was a movie that I always enjoyed anytime that I did watch it. And in preparation for the sequel, I went back recently and watched that movie with my family, and it's just a good time. Tim Burton definitely has his own vibe. You can tell it's a Tim Burton movie. Michael Keaton kills it as Beetlejuice. The mixture of that cast worked really well, and it's an enjoyable film. Going into the sequel, I don't know that I had these crazy high expectations, especially when we're talking about a sequel in general. A lot of times the second movie in the franchise tends to kind of teeter a little bit, not really hitting the same beats that the original did, let alone a sequel set 30 plus years after the original. So I don't know that I had crazy expectations. I was just hoping for a good film and hoping that they would keep with the tone and the energy of the original. And for the most part, I gladly can say, at least for me personally, that I felt they did that. They accomplished that, and they did it pretty well. The story of the film is pretty basic, but not in a bad way. It's kind of a rehash of the original film. We're in the same house as the original film. It's being put up for sale, and throughout all these little wacky side subplots that have been going on in the movie, the way we jump into this universe is fairly similar, and Beetlejuice's end goal is pretty much the same as it always was. Again, which isn't a bad thing. I think for this movie, it was kind of smart not to try and change it too much or make it overly complex, because it doesn't need to be. This is a movie we're looking to just have a good time and dive back into this world and see these characters again. And I think that they did that for the most part pretty well. So jumping into some of the things that I really liked about the film, because there are a few. The visuals of this world, I think, matched the original film very well. Obviously, the technology is more updated and you can see a bit of the difference, but this kind of stop motion view of some of the characters that we see really fits in line with Tim Burton anyway, and just his style of movie and cinematography. And this movie definitely does a great job fitting in that category, with kind of this dark setting but crazy bright colors. The designs of some of the dead people were funny but creepy, and it most definitely feels like a Beetlejuice film. Kind of in that same vein, the use of practical effects as opposed to CGI, I thought was brilliant. There is a lot of skepticism when you mention a movie that might heavily have CGI, just because I don't think it's really a secret. The CGI in 2008 looked a whole lot better than it does nowadays for the most part. And there's a lot of reasons to why that is, but it's nice to see some practical effects at work to help the world come alive. And this movie did a great job with that as well. There was a rumor when this movie started production that they were going to go heavy on the practical effects. And that was something that you just love to hear, especially when you're talking about a Beetlejuice movie, right? And it definitely helped to add to the quirky, weird vibe of the film. Like, for example, there was a character in this movie after, we visit the underworld, and he died in the ocean, we'll say. He has these fish that are connected to him, and they're biting him, and they're attached to his face and his body, and you can tell that they're electronic. They're not CGI'd on there. It's part of the costume that the guy is wearing, but it didn't take away at all from the film, from his design. It fit well. It fit perfectly in there. It was kind of funny, and I found myself, for the most part, in these type of situations, not minding it at all. I think if you're going to see Beetlejuice, I feel like you're maybe the type of person to prefer the practical effects over the CGI. And I think that for the most part, you'll be pleased with how they did it. The cast of this film was well fit. We got a few returning actors into the film, like Catherine O'Hara, Winona Ryder, and of course Michael Keaton. And even though that was pretty much it, I think it was just fine. A lot of the story is very Lydia, Winona Ryder's character centric, and there was a nice blend between the old cast members and the new ones, which the new ones were a great addition as well for the most part. Jenna Ortega, I think, kills her role. I think it's pretty obvious that she would fit well within the Tim Burton universe. She's worked with him before, and I was actually pleasantly surprised that she wasn't playing this dark, weird Wednesday type of character. She was almost the opposite of Winona Ryder's character in the original. And talking about Winona Ryder's character, Lydia, I actually think that was probably the most different of the returning characters that we got, which kind of makes sense. She's a mother now, she's an adult. She found a way to capitalize on her ability to give themselves a decent life. But even with all that change, she still feels like the same character she was in the original, at least where it counts. Catherine O'Hara, it's been a while since I've seen her in any project, but she jumps back into this role extremely well. Still this bit of entitlement in her character, very dramatic and very expressive, but you can also see the maturity in her character as she has grown in these past years, to the point where now she's ready to part ways with this house because of life situations. Now, speaking about Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice, jumping back into this crazy role, I'm a little bit mixed. Don't get me wrong, I think Michael Keaton did a fantastic job as far as jumping back into the persona of Beetlejuice, and it definitely looked like he was having a lot of fun in the role. He has the voice down, the craziness down, the look was fantastic, just like out of the original. But I'm not going to lie, throughout the movie, I feel like he was missing a little bit of his loud and obnoxiousness that he had in the original film. He was a lot more weathered down, he was a lot more quiet in this film. It just felt like he didn't have that energetic pizzazz that he had in the original film. He was kind of monotone in a lot of areas, and I didn't know why that was bugging me so much, but it was a gripe that I had with the film.
What the f?
But even from that aside, it was awesome to see him jump back into that role. Other than his monotone kind of voice, I guess you could say, he did a fantastic job. And like I said, it looked like he was having a whole hell of a lot of fun jumping back into this role and enjoying it. As far as things that didn't really work for me, there's only really a few, which you may agree with me, you may not. But starting off with one of them, there is a subplot where we kind of get a little bit of an explanation in regards to Beetlejuice's background, his story, and what he was kind of doing when he was alive. And I'm not gonna lie, the character that's involved with that and that entire subplot of this story, I kind of felt was unnecessary, mainly in regards to Monica Bellucci's character and who she plays in this film. Nothing against Monica Bellucci. I really only know her from, I believe, Matrix 3, and she does a fine job in this role. It was just a storyline that I felt wasn't really needed. It didn't push anything forward. It felt like something that was just there to give Beetlejuice something to worry about, and I don't think we really needed it. And as far as gripes go, I felt that way with a couple characters, including the character of the underworld like police chief played by Willem Dafoe. Great actor, I love Willem Dafoe. Just didn't really feel like it was needed all that much. I think if there was any of the subplots that actually made the most sense was probably the one with Jenna Ortega and her little love interest that she had. It was a nice little flip. I didn't really like how it ended all that much, how that part of the movie or that subplot of the movie was all tied together. It happened kind of quick, but it worked pretty well for me as far as pushing the character of Astrid further into this world and what is going on. It did fine. But another one of the side plots that I think could have maybe not been in the movie is the one following Catherine O'Hara's character, Delia. Not so much her, but her husband, Charles. In the original, he was played by Jeffrey Jones. If you didn't know, Jeffrey Jones has had some very controversial situations going on in his life that some speculate as to probably why he is not in this film. But the character of Charles does pop up. There's a little side storyline with him and Delia, and you know, it worked well. There's a scene where they explain what happened to Charles in like a little animation form, and that worked well with me. It felt very Tim Burton. But if I had to be honest, I don't think the entire plot line of it was necessary. Could have just left the character out as a whole, but it wasn't that deep for me. It was fine. I just moved on from it. Lastly, I think Not something that I didn't like, not something that didn't work. It just something I noticed was the vibe of the movie, the jokes that are thrown out there. You can tell, I think, are very toned down from the humor in the original film. A lot of the jokes and the humor that were in the original film were very fitting for the time. Maybe you couldn't get away with nowadays. And I think that if you are big enough of a Beetlejuice fan, you will notice that vibe shift a little bit. It's not incredibly noticeable. Not by any means, in my opinion, do I feel like it's overly censored or anything like that, but you can just tell it's a little bit softer in the humor than in the original film. But with the day's age that we're living in, it's understandable why they might take that route. It wasn't done in a way that made me enjoy the movie any less. I still laughed. I still had a good time. It was a fun film. That is pretty much my thoughts on Beetlejuice. If you have gone to see the movie this past weekend, let me know what you thought about it, what you enjoyed, or if you didn't enjoy it, let me know why. If you are planning to go see the movie, let me know what day you got your ticket for. As for me, I think you should go and check it out anyway. It is an enjoyable film. I think it stacks up well with the original. The original, I think, is still better, but this doesn't trail far behind, in my opinion. I think a solid 7 out of 10 is probably fitting for this movie. As I said before, thank you for clicking on this video. If you stayed into the whole thing, I appreciate you. Make sure you hit that like button. It helps out the video, pushes it out a little bit. Also, consider subscribing to the channel so you get notified whenever I drop a new video. And I appreciate you giving me your time, so thank you for that. But that is where I'm gonna call it. So y'all be smooth. I'm out, and stay geeked up.